Taming the High Cost of College, Episode 92.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello, and welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we have a great interview with Jillian Arany. She's a master's student, and she's studying biology in Canada. And she's going to tell us her story and how she was able to overcome depression and anxiety and get back on the road to getting to her dreams, where she is now, again, about to graduate with her master's in biology, and she's already landed her dream job, despite the fact that she had some struggles with anxiety and other issues while she was in undergrad and a little bit in master's as well. So this episode, I think, is great information and kind of a success story that people that are struggling with depression and other mental health issues, you can kind of see that there's others out there that are also struggling with mental health issues, and many of them go on to pursue college successfully, go on and get their careers that they're interested in, and it is not something that is necessarily going to hold you back. And I think as more people talk about it, the more people realize that they're not alone. They'll learn more about the accommodations that are available and how the universities can help you through the process and, again, get you on the road to wherever it is that you're trying to go and overcome your hurdles and not let them hold you back. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this episode. We've got Jillian here. All right, today I'm sitting down with Jillian Arany. She's a master's student at Arcadia University. Welcome, Jillian.
Thank you so much for having me.
The reason we have you on today because you were going to share a little bit about your story, and I think you've got a little, life experience as well as some expertise on kind of a challenging issue for a lot of students, which would be, going off to university or off to college while you're dealing with depression and anxiety.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about your story and how it all kind of unfolded for you?
Yeah, so when I was in grade 12, which would have been back in 2008, my grandmother suddenly passed away, and it was really hard for me. And in grade 12, it's the year where you're stressed, you're applying to universities, all these big changes are going to happen. So having my grandmother pass away that September was really hard on me because on top of everything else I was dealing with, I had that as well. So right when she passed away, I was able to take some time off of school. But as a result of that, I missed a lot of classes and that kind of thing. So then I was stuck catching up with everything. And that's kind of when the depression and anxiety first showed up. And I knew it was more than just being sad or being upset that my grandmother had passed away, because there's a difference between being sad and being depressed. I lost all motivation for school, all motivation for sports, everything. So I knew it was something more. And the moments that really stood out to me were I was going in to write a biology test one day, and my teacher had said, if anybody wants to come in early the morning of the test, you're more than welcome to. And then we can review any materials. And if other students know the answers to questions, you can feel free and help them out to review. So I did. I went in and people had questions. So then I was answering some of the questions, and then class started. I wrote the test. And as I was writing it, I just kind of knew, I was thinking okay, I just reviewed this half an hour ago with my classmates, but I just can't put my answers down. And so sure enough, when I got the test back, I didn't do great. And my teacher pulled me aside and said, you were reviewing all of this material with the other students a half an hour before the test, but you just didn't seem to be able to write it down on paper. And I told her, I said, I really don't know what happened. I just can't explain it. My thoughts were just all kind of mumble jumbled and everything. And so that happened once with a biology test, and a very similar thing happened with a chemistry test. And so at that point, I knew that it had to be more than just me blanking or me forgetting things. So I was able to go into my guidance counselor's office in my high school, and they told me, all right, because of this, whenever you have tests, you're more than welcome to bring your test down and write it here. And that way you're kind of out of the stressful environment. And that way you'll be able to think more clearly. So that's what I did. And it really helped. And so that's when I first noticed how like accommodations would be really helpful. So then that was able to kind of get under control within 5 months. I was able to go back to my class and write tests, this and that. And then I went off to university that September, so September of 2009. And first year, living away from home, everything's exciting, everything's new. You're making new friends, you're interacting with others, you're in a completely new place. I was about 1,000 miles from home, 1,600 kilometers, give or take. So a little far, but first year was fine. Second year was fine. Just the regular kind of stressors of university, taking 5 classes, and with being in science on top of my 5 classes, usually 3 to 4 of them would also have an associated lab or an associated tutorial. So it was busy. But it wasn't until I was in third year when my depression and anxiety kind of just took over again. And it was at that point that I started to use a lot of the resources on campus that I really wasn't aware of. And with being a resident assistant as well, living in residence, I was also helping other students besides myself with accommodations and looking into what was available to students who were struggling, whether it be with depression and anxiety or if they have a learning disability or whatever it might be. Universities can be really good about making accommodations. So I went to what they call at where I did my undergrad, it was called the accessibility services. And so you went in and you just talked to them about what your situation was, what you could do. And so I had to provide a doctor's note, but I was able to get time and a half on any exams and tests. So instead of having like an hour and a half to write them, I would get 3 hours, which really helped because then you're not stressing to finish on time, have everything written down, or you're afraid you're going to miss something because you don't have enough time. And those were all kind of things that happened with my anxiety. I was always afraid like, oh, I'm never going to have enough time. I'm never going to have like enough space to write this and all those kind of things. So having the accommodations and the extra time was really nice. And I also got the benefit of having my exams spaced out. So in university, most of the time your exams are put together by the registrar's office and you don't really have a say in like when they are. So with being science, I always put all the exams back to back, which is really stressful to be studying for usually like 4 exams all back to back. So one of my benefits was that I had to have at least a day between my exams. So if I have exams like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'd then just have them like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then the following Monday, which is really nice because then you're able to focus on just one exam versus trying to study for multiple exams at the same time. So that was one of the accommodations that I got, which was really nice. And I think that because like the stigma of mental health is shifting, these resources are becoming a lot more evident and students tend to use them more. Even my time at Dow, because I also worked in that same exam office that I wrote my exams. Like just between the like few years that I worked there, the number of students that were using that resource grew in an incredible amount. And so that was at the university where I did my undergraduate degree. So now with doing my master's degree, I also worked in the same type of office, proctoring exams. And that university as well had very similar accommodations. You could either write by yourself, you could write in a small group. But I remember when I first wrote exams when I was at Dow, they put all the exams in like the gym. So you'd walk into this gym and there'd be like 1,000 desks. You walk in and you're just like, oh my goodness, because there's people, not just people writing the exam you're writing, people are writing other exams and people are constantly getting up and moving and the desks are squeaky and it's it was just like sensory overload going in there. So once I finally figured out that there were these accommodations, it was really nice.
Mhm.
And I mean, that was for my particular situation, but I see there's all sorts of other resources as well. So I was a reader for one exam. So students who have difficulty reading or they just have dyslexia, they can get someone to read their exam for them. They have programs that will also do that. They have scribes as well that will circle answers, which I've done before. There's all sorts of computer programs out there. You can get note takers for your classes, all sorts of things that people just weren't really aware of. And I didn't even know all these things existed until I went to the office and had a meeting with the exam coordinator. And she told me, like, if you need someone to take notes, we can provide a note taker. If you need extra time, if you need a computer to write your exam. So all those sorts of things are available. It just differs for the university, but knowing that that option was there really helped me because nothing is more stressful than exams.
Okay. So if you're a parent and
Mm,
there's a number of parents out there that are probably thinking, we've had challenges in high school of various sorts,
mhm.
and now we're looking for a college that may be able to accommodate whatever difficulties we had in high school.
Yep.
Is there a particular office, or how do you learn more about what's available at a university early on as far as what services are available? What's the name of the office, or who do you talk
Yeah,
to?
the ones that I was involved in, they were called like disability services or disability and access services. And back when I was learning about them, they weren't really advertised because there weren't as many people who are comfortable sharing, like, okay, I do need this extra help. So like one thing I would tell people if they can't find it easily on a website or if they could look up like access services or disability and access services, just to email like the registrar's office because they would be able to direct you. And it might even be called something different depending on the university, but usually it would be like under the services or thing like services on campus.
Right. Was that part of your search process then after as you were dealing with it as a senior in high school? Did you have any concerns or look into that as part of your choosing a college process when you were looking to
No, mostly because the program I wanted to do, marine biology, was only available at two universities in Canada. So my options were one or the other. And at the time when I was looking at universities, that wasn't really something that was on my mind. I kind of just said, because I had been looking for universities for a long time and I kind of was set on the one that I was going to. Um, it wasn't really something I looked into, but I know other people like looking straight at the accommodations that are available is a determining factor. And I think, especially at the smaller scale universities, like the one where I'm doing my master's degree, there are a lot more accommodations and they work with you a lot more versus a larger scale university where there's a lot more students. So I know for proctoring exams at the smaller university where I'm doing my master's degree, there's a lot more accommodations that are available just because they don't have the huge influx of people and they don't need to have accommodating thousands and thousands of students when the population of the university is only a few thousand. So it really just depends on the university and what's available.
right. So I think another concern that parents might have is, and you kind of alluded to it in the introduction there, is the stigma that might go along with taking
Yeah.
advantage of services. I guess you had mentioned that things are kind of shifting. So what's been your experience as far as talking with other people or revealing that, or I mean, do
Mhm.
many people know, et cetera, et cetera?
When I was going through university, I was still of the mindset like I didn't want very many people to know. I mostly talked to a couple people that I was really close with, and my parents were the ones who only really knew just because, again, even though that was only a few years ago, there was this whole, oh, mental illness, you can't talk about it. Oh, you're crazy if you have mental illness. But now, because it is openly talked about, I find it is shifting. So for me, it wasn't the profs that were difficult. The profs were very accommodating. And even there was one time I remember, so one of my exams was online and we did it, and like there was a few of us that got together and we all opened it, and most of the students had, like, it was a 3 hour, you had 3 hours, and I opened mine. It told me I had 4.5 hours to do it. So it was usually the profs that were really accommodating. The thing I found difficult was other students. And that's just because, again, the stigma was still there back when I started. But it was trying to explain to these other students who would be in all of my same classes, because I studied marine biology, which is a pretty small program. And so you were with the same people for all of your classes. And so when the time came for exams and everybody has like that 4 or 5 day stretch with all these exams, and they only see you, or they don't see you, sorry, when they're going to write the exams, or they'll ask you like, oh, how did you find this exam? And you have to say, oh, well, I haven't written it yet. And they're kind of like, oh, well, why? And then that's kind of when I would say, like, I have really bad exam anxiety. I have really bad anxiety. I have accommodations and they have to be spaced out. End of story. And so it was kind of difficult for people to understand, like, oh, you just get your exams spaced out. Well, no, there's a lot more that goes into that. And it wasn't something that I would go around saying like, oh, look at me, all my exams are spaced out, because if I was on the other side and I wasn't aware of mental illness, or I'd never been around someone with it, it would be really hard to understand. But that was the only thing I ran into. But again, there's lots of resources there. Like, one thing I forgot to mention was that the universities I was at offered free counseling as well, which is something that was incredible. I think you got up to like 10 free sessions with a counselor on campus, and then they would refer you to somebody off campus. But having that there as well, and so I would go there and talk to them about these issues I was having with other students. And it was hard for me because these are your peers, right? They're the people you're in classes with, you're doing your labs with, you're studying for exams with. So that was the only really issue I ran into. But I was kind of the mind, like, they're not in my shoes. They don't know what goes on in my head. So it's up to them to just accept it. And yeah, sure, they can get upset that their exams aren't spaced out, but they're not experiencing the same feelings I'm experiencing. So that was really the only thing. But, it was only a couple people. Most of them were understanding. And even still, some people were like, oh, like, really? That's awesome. Like, I think I need to go and look into that resource. And they did. And then lo and behold, like the following year, they'd be like, oh, yeah, I have accommodations. So the more people that were involved with it and knew about it, the more people could get accommodations and get help.
Right. So what was the process like where they determined what accommodations were appropriate? And I mean, did you work with doctors or counselors, or who made the decisions about, those types of things where, as you mentioned, you got extra time and exams spaced out, where other people might need, as you mentioned, a note taker or a reader? Who determines what's appropriate for your situation?
It really depends on the university. So when I was doing my undergrad, I went into, I set up a meeting with the exam coordinator. I think that's what her formal title was. And we sat down and went through the papers. And so for that university, the process was you had to have a doctor's note stating what your reasoning was for needing the accommodation. So fortunate enough for me, my doctor that I had that's been with me for years through my depression and anxiety was at the university. That's how I got connected with her. And so she just said, wrote down, I had anxiety and that's why I needed. And they sat down with me and said, okay, what would help you? So I said, having extra time and not having my exams back to back. And so then with that, they kind of work with you to determine what accommodations will allow you the best environment to perform. And so, but with the other smaller scale university, I don't think you needed to have a doctor's note. You just had to have a meeting and kind of explain your situation and why you needed these extra accommodations. So I think it's really just dependent on the school and what resources are available.
Okay. And then obviously you had it in undergrad. Do you still have accommodations now that you're at the master's level?
Yeah, it's a little different because I'm not formally in classes, because I just had to take 4 classes over the 2 years, and most of the classes aren't like your typical university class, like lecture material, lab, exams. It was more like independent literature studies and that kind of thing. But in the event of how if I was in classes like that, they would have made the accommodations because I'm aware of other postgraduate degree students who do get accommodations because for different programs it's different in terms of material and work. So they do make accommodations for all various levels of education.
Right. Do you feel like the fact that you had accommodations in your undergrad had a impact on your ability to go on to grad school?
It helped me perform a lot better. One thing I can remember is this was before I went to the accommodations office. I used to do really well in like the labs and homework assignments and that kind of thing. But then when it came to exams, it was just a completely different environment. And I remember there was one time I got to an exam and I just like completely blanked and I had to sit there for like 10, 15 minutes and just sit there and calm myself down before I was even able to open my exam and start working on it. Whereas when you're in this environment where you're either in your own room or you're in a room with a couple people versus a room with hundreds or thousands of people, it just promotes a better environment. For me anyways, it did. And so I was able to perform better on exams and tests, which again would help me not necessarily get into grad school, but it would have like a better, it would look better for me anyways.
Right. Absolutely. And then I guess the admissions department of the grad school doesn't know that you had accommodations in any way?
No, I don't. It doesn't go really anywhere on your record or anything. At least for the schools I was at, it didn't.
Okay. So if I guess fast forward, I'm going to plan your life a little. And maybe it's not the way you intend your life to go, but fast forward to where you have children of your own that are looking at college and assuming that they maybe have similar struggles to you. What kind of advice would you be giving your children?
I would say if this is something that's a factor in your life and you know it's going to affect you. So for me, I know that anytime I'm going to need to take a test or write an exam, that it's going to cause me a great amount of anxiety. So I know that I need to look into the accommodations, which is, yes, an extra step, but it's an important step. So if something like that is a factor, you should definitely just go and talk to whether it's the registrar's office or if you're able to find the resource and just email them and explain your situation. And most likely they're going to say, okay, let's have a meeting. So if that's something that's a important aspect of the college life that you're looking for, it's definitely good to look into what's available on campus because there's so many resources that people aren't even aware of. Like until I talked to someone who used the accessibility office, I had no idea that was even an option or that was something that even existed. And then further to the counseling, and I was able to learn about all these resources with being a residence assistant, but not everybody's going to be a residence assistant. So it's good idea to just browse through the university's website and see what kind of things are available.
Mm-hmm.
But
right.
It shouldn't be like a determining factor. Like if you're struggling with anxiety or struggling with depression, but you really want to go to university, the universities are usually really accommodating to that. So don't let like having a mental illness deter you from going to university because it is manageable and there's ways around it.
Right.
Which is good.
So if you look back on kind of your academic career, are there things that could have gone more smoothly that you wish you would have done differently?
If I had known about the resource from the first year, it would have been a lot better. I think that's the only thing. And I just wasn't aware that resource was on campus. But I think that's the only thing really, because being able to be in my own room helped me perform better. And so I think it could have influenced my performance for sure. Not that I did poorly, but I think it would have helped a lot in terms of stressful situations, and especially when it came to having a lot of exams back to back. So if I'd known about it sooner, I think it would have been nice. But that's really the only thing I can think of.
Well, great. I guess as far as your story, etc., are you still involved with mental health professionals or just working with people on campus? Or can you explain a little bit more about the on-campus versus off-campus help
Mm-hmm.
that you might be taking advantage of?
Yeah, I've continued to see counselors on and off again just because right now I'm at like a good point. My depression and anxiety is under control. I'm on my medication for it, which is something I eventually want to wean off of, but right now it would just be too much. Yeah, I still do see counselors and I still work with the accessibility office, so I'm still involved with that. And I one thing I do is I like to share my story, and it's often that you don't necessarily see people commenting or posting about it, but then every now and then I'll get a message from someone saying, "Okay, like this is what I'm going through and your stories really helped me to share it and talk to someone." Which
Mhm.
is something it's very humbling to have someone say your story is the reason why I was able to seek help or go and get accommodations or to finally tell so and so that I've been struggling.
Right.
And I like talking about it because even for me back, what was it, 5 years ago when I first was diagnosed 6 years ago, the stigma was there. Like I was afraid to tell anybody because the first thing I was like, "Oh, they're going to judge me. Oh, they're going to see me differently. They're not going to want to be my friend." But that's not the case. It's the strongest people I know are the people who suffer with mental illness and don't think that it's a reason to not succeed in going to university or like that it's going to impact you getting a career because it's not.
Right. Are there other outside resources that you might point people to now that you've been involved with this for 6 or 8 years that,
Mhm.
as far as support groups or books that you should read or beyond
Mhm.
working with the university itself, what else is out there?
There's all sorts of groups. There's all sorts of, especially online groups, online forums, online chats, all sorts of things. And it's nice. Like I can't remember what the name of I think it's called like 7 Cups of Tea, something like that. Is like an online chat group where they match you with like a mentor or someone who's been there that can help you. So like I'm looking into potentially becoming one of the mentors on there that can chat with people when they're struggling because it's nice to sometimes have someone from an outside perspective that doesn't necessarily know everything and you just need to vent. And I'm lucky enough that my family knows, a lot of my close friends know that I'm willing to share it. So I'm able to talk to people, but there are tons of resources, tons of support groups because the stigma is shifting and people are aware that there everybody suffers with something or everybody knows someone who's suffering. So again, there's just lots of support out there and there's a lot of groups on campus I know that would meet and talk, and it's nice to be around people who are going through the same thing because if you're not, you can kind of feel like an outcast sometimes. Not that you get excluded, but for me, I just kind of felt like nobody understood what I was going through. So it was nice to know that there were those groups on campus and things that are available even now being like getting out of a university setting that there are still counselors available and all these other groups that can meet.
Right. I think you provided us a lot of great information. I guess just out of curiosity, what's next for you? Are you looking to graduate soon, and what do you plan on doing next?
I'm planning, hopefully, the university I'm at only has one graduation ceremony a year, so it won't be until next summer or next spring when I formally graduate. But I'm hoping to have my master's wrapped up sometime in the fall because I do start working full time as a fisheries biologist next month with a conservation group, which is right up my alley, exactly what I wanted to do, which is really nice. So that's what I'll be doing. So I'll be busy between thesis writing and working full time, but it's the
All right.
good kind of busy.
Oh, yes. So you've got a full-time job lined up. You've got to finish up your
Yeah,
schooling. Well,
it'll be
great.
busy, but it'll be good.
Well, it sounds like you certainly have figured out how to overcome your issues and are on the path to success here.
Yeah, takes some time, but once you're able to figure out how to manage it for yourself, it's good because there's so many different ways that people manage and you just have to find what works for you, especially in your different environments and different settings.
All right. Well, this has been a lot of great information. if people want to get in contact with you, would that be all right? I guess I'm
Oh,
kind
of
of putting you on the
course.
spot here, but
Of course. I'm
uh,
more than willing to chat with people, talk about what's helped me.
okay, well, great. So we'll put your contact information then in the show notes. So you'll be able to go to our website at Taming the High Cost of College and look up this episode, and there'll be some links or email or whatever it is that you're willing to provide there so that people can connect with you.
Perfect. Sounds great.
All right. I appreciate all the great information and your willingness to share.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. That was a great episode with Jillian. Her story is a great one, and hopefully it encouraged you or people that you know to go ahead and get out there and just make it happen. This is podcast number 92, so the show notes and the contact information are available at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com/92, and that will help you get to the show notes and with links to Jillian and other mental health issue websites. As always, if you need help or you want to learn more, you can visit our website. You can give me a call, contact our office. I'm here and willing to answer your questions. That's all we have for today, and I appreciate you listening.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns two companies, Baldridge Wealth Management and Baldridge College Solutions. The Baldridge companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.